I don't think I've ever looked at a Formula 1 podium before and gone, how the hell did you three get there? Crazy. Hey guys, Sean here and welcome to the F1 Word and the Azerbaijan Grand Prix review. What a race. Fantastic Grand Prix. Best of the season so far by a mile, and it's hard to see that being topped if we're being honest. We're going to start, as we always do in these reviews, to look at the race result. As you can see, Daniel Ricciardo taking victory there. 3.9 seconds clear of Valtteri Bottas, and a stunning drive from 18-year-old Lance Stroll to third place. Vettel fourth, Hamilton fifth. We're going to get into that in just a moment. Do not worry about that. Esteban Ocon in sixth place. Great points for Kevin Magnussen as well. And McLaren getting their first couple of points of the year. As well, encouraging as well to see 6.1 seconds between the top 5 cars in the race. However, a little less encouraging when you then turn around and see that Esteban Ocon is 30 seconds down the road and McLaren are a minute and a half further back. And as we look at the second half of the result, there you can see Kimi Räikkönen is classified as a finisher, although technically he did retire. 14 classified runners at the end. Retirements for Sergio Perez, Felipe Massa, Nico Hülkenberg, Max Verstappen, Daniel Kvyat, and Jolyon Palmer. Driver of the day, absolutely rightly so, was Lance Stroll. Has he just strolled to P3? And lovely. Oh, I punned it. Fantastic. And fastest lap went to Sebastian Vettel, which is probably a good thing for him and maybe the only thing he gets to keep from this weekend because, and I'm going into a negative, I wanted to talk about Daniel Ricciardo first so much because he totally deserves it. But the big story from the weekend, of course, is Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton colliding rather controversially. Yes, now if you don't know what happened, where have you been? That is the first question. Clearly living under a rock because it has been everywhere and it is all anybody is talking about in the sporting world at the moment. Did Sebastian Vettel deliberately hit Lewis Hamilton? Did he bring the sport into disrepute? In short, yes, on both counts, and how he finished the Grand Prix is beyond me. I'm going to come to that in just a moment, but if I'm looking at it, giving my opinion, which is kind of the point of these, Hamilton is not totally blameless. I have to say that he's not entirely blameless in this situation. He may not have brake tested Vettel, but he knew exactly what he was doing for me. He was the lead car at the end of the day, though. It's his prerogative. We all know, as F1 fans, that when the safety car lights go out, the lead car becomes a safety car, and it's totally up to them at what speed they travel. The only thing they can't do is brake aggressively, accelerate aggressively, brake aggressively. He did brake aggressively, so I get why Vettel is angry. I totally understand that. But whether you believe Lewis Hamilton brake tested Sebastian Vettel or not, what is wholly unacceptable is Vettel's reaction. No driver, let alone no driver, let alone a 4-time world champion, should ever use their car to deliberately cause a collision in a show of anger to another driver. Ever. Done. Finished. That's it. What really gets me, and I mean really, really gets me, is the flat-out denial from Sebastian Vettel. He actually denies it happens. And I can't, it baffles me. He thinks he got the penalty for hitting the back of Hamilton. Although, if you actually read the steward's press release, it quite clearly states what happened. I have no idea how he can deny it. He is completely out of order. Essentially, Lewis brakes hard, Vettel hits the back of him, but then Vettel, at that point, should be on the radio going, come on, what are we doing here? Like he does, bitching and moaning and whining about it. FIA or stewards step in, Charlie Whiting deals with it, Hamilton gets a ticking off or a penalty or a time penalty, something like that. All done and dusted. That's what you do. I mean, we all like passion. We all want to see drivers with passion and wanting to, we want to see all of that, but not when it puts people in danger. Okay, it's at 40 kilometers an hour, but it doesn't matter if it's 40 kilometers an hour or 240 kilometers an hour. It is completely unacceptable. He came alongside Lewis Hamilton, waved his hand about in anger, turned the car into him. Also, believe it or not, there are people out there that think that Sebastian Vettel didn't do it deliberately. Now, I'm kind of aiming not to swear too much now on the channel. I know I have a history of it, but I am going to call that utter BS. That is absolute rubbish. Complete and total rubbish. He did that deliberately. He was being stupid. Heat of the moment, yes, okay, fine. He's wound up. They're men, as he said. I'm going to come to that in a moment. That was a brilliant quote and a great comeback from Lewis Hamilton. But it's unacceptable from any driver. But he's a 4-time world champion. He's the most successful in terms of world championships on the grid. And this is just unacceptable. And 7 world titles between them, and they still manage to cock it up like that. Everyone has an off day. Everyone gets angry. Everyone has road rage. The amount of times I get angry driving to work because some moron's only doing 59 in a 60 is unbelievable. But I would never get alongside that car and swing my car into them. I'd be angry. I might put my hand up in the air in anger. But you just don't do it. And all right, you can't apply road logic to a racetrack, but it's unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. And a 10-second stop-go penalty and 3 points on his super license is a joke. An absolute joke and an insult to the sport in many ways. What he has done, and there's no, let's not make any bones about it, 40 kilometres an hour or not, he has brought the sport into disrepute. He has endangered himself and others. He has used his car as a weapon, and he's taken the law into his own hands. Okay, a weapon, it does sound a little over the top, but that's exactly what he's done. And for me, the only penalty that fits that incident is a black flag for Sebastian Vettel. Car number 5, black flag. We've seen that before. Michael Schumacher, of course. Yeah, car 5, black flag. Christ, yeah. Anyway, there you go. It should have been. Absolutely. Do I think, as some are saying, that because he's in a Ferrari, he got away with it a little bit? Yeah, possibly. There is that history, isn't there? They're not keen on giving Ferrari penalties, but I don't know if the stewards would do that. I think the FIA, maybe. If we're at Monza, absolutely. The FIA, it's whether they now take retrospective action. And I think they should. They absolutely should. Race ban, based on everything I just said, yes. The problem is, 10-second penalty, their argument will be he's had a penalty already. If he gets one, I would predict, not confidently, but I would predict probably a grid drop for Austria, which is, again, a kick in the teeth for Hamilton because you can overtake in Austria and the undercut works beautifully there. So I just, I don't know. I don't know if they will. There's a little part of me that seriously doubts they'll take any retrospective action, but they absolutely should. The great thing, or not the great thing, but from the steward's point of view, is if they decide that he has brought the sport into disrepute, which I think is I honestly don't know, this is a complete, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, I think it's Article 151C, something like that. I might be wrong on that, I do apologise, but basically states that if you bring the sport into disrepute, there is no limit to the penalty. They can do what they want. They could give him a 3-place grid drop, or they could throw him out of the race, or they could ban him for a race, 2 races, 3 races, whatever they want. It's entirely up to them. They are completely limitless in terms of what they do penalty-wise. However, I suspect if there is retrospective action taken, it will probably be a grid drop. But I'm going to leave it there. But I'm not going to leave it there because that's ridiculous, because I want to just quote a couple of things that they've both said very, very quickly. Sebastian Vettel said, "Nothing happened, did it? He brake checked me. He risked damage." He's done something similar a couple of years ago in China. He was then pressed about turning into Lewis Hamilton and said, "I showed him I wasn't happy." When pressed again with the question, "But there was contact between the 2 cars," he said, "Yeah, I ran into the back of him. It was obvious. He brake checked me and I hit the back." He's done this a couple of times. I think it's very clear. We are racing with men and we should both have had a penalty. Yes. Hamilton was then asked, "Did you brake test him?" He said, "No, I didn't. I controlled the pace. I slowed in the same spot as every other restart." He didn't, but I'm not going to get into that. We're talking a few meters, but he didn't exactly the same spot. But anyway, he said, "Deliberately driving into another driver is a disgrace." And this is a line that I think is important, given that F1 is trying to reach out to the younger fans. Imagine young kids watching today and seeing a 4-time world champion doing that. Let's not forget, guys, these are young people's heroes. Some of these guys are my heroes. And for a young fan to see their hero doing that, does it condone it? It just sends out the wrong message. There needs to be action. And we're going to leave it with this one. When asked about Vettel's "we are men" comment, he said, "If he wants to prove he's a man, we should do it out of the car, face to face. I would pay to see that. Probably more than I pay for a Grand Prix weekend. Who would win that one? That's an interesting point. Let's not go too far though. And let's not try and encourage the violence. But that's kind of where it should be. Vettel will be very lucky if he gets away without retrospective action, and he's already very lucky not to have been black flagged. But I'm going to leave it there and go straight on now to the man who deserves to have had the first point. And that is Daniel Ricciardo. What a drive from the Aussie. Whenever anything goes wrong at the front, he is there to pick up that win, to pick up those points. Fantastic. Let's not forget as well, at one point he was 17th, and it all looked pretty dire for him, and points were really were unlikely at that point, and he goes on and wins the race. That move on Stroll and Massa into turn one was incredible. Just absolutely incredible. Very impressive. He's great with the brakes. He did it in Hungary a lot a few years ago. That dive bomb is just incredible. I don't know how he gets it so spot on. Him and Max Verstappen, really absolutely brilliant with that kind of move. I didn't think at the time, I don't think anybody really picked up on it or expected that was the move for the win. Really, Lance Stroll and him, but incredible from Daniel Ricciardo. He's such a great guy. He's just perfect for the sport. He's a breath of fresh air. He's such a laugh, and he's a great character, and we need that in the sport. You know, we want that. He reaches out to fans. He reaches out to people. He's just a really decent guy. Totally deserves a win. So happy for him. So happy for Red Bull, a team that were not expected to pick up any race wins this year after a pretty dismal start to the season. But yeah, I think I don't know what to say about him. He's just such a nice guy. And I don't think anybody's ever unhappy when Daniel Ricciardo wins a race. And of course, the Aussies will be going absolutely bananas over it. I love saying that. We'll stick with Red Bull just for a moment, though. And Max Verstappen, we're going to do a video on him in a few days' time and what the future holds for him. But he retired again with engine failure. That's 4 retirements in the last 6 races. It's something like that, isn't it? How long can he take this before he moves on? We will go into this, but he's going to be frustrated and angry. He's got youth on his side, so he could probably afford to give Red Bull a bit more time to sort this out. But I think he's just so disappointed. Not as disappointed as the fans are. We want to see him racing. He's such a good driver, and he sets the track alight when he's out there. He's just brilliant. I love him to bits. I think he's great, and we want to see him racing, and he needs to be at the front competing. He will be. You know, Red Bull have been here before. They will get this right. We know they will. It'll take time, but Max needs to be patient. I think Red Bull is the best place for him at the moment. He's still young, but we'll go into that in another video. Just gutted that he didn't get to finish the race. One man who I'm going to go to before second place man is Lance Stroll. He was quiet throughout, and that's probably the best way to describe his race, to be honest. And then the Hamilton and Vettel incident happened, and he drove like a pro, kept cool under pressure, and he showed finally that potential. You know, Williams really bigged him up at the start of the season when they gave him the race seat. Everyone was a little surprised, but he's just shown his potential, and it's great. It's absolutely great. It's a nice little, I don't know, after all the controversy, all the drama, it's a little heartwarming story, a happy story for Formula One to see Lance Stroll, 18 years old, get his first podium. Gutted that he missed out on second place thanks to Valtteri Bottas. How dare he? How dare he race to the line? What does he think this is, Formula One? But I don't think Lance Stroll will be overly disappointed to finish third at all. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but is he not? I think he's I'm just going off the top of my head here. I think he's the first Canadian since Villeneuve in the BAR in 2001 to finish on the podium. And a nice little stat here, if you've written this one down, the youngest rookie in their debut year to stand on the podium. And I'm hoping that's going to give him the confidence and belief going forward. I mean, 17 points in 2 races when you consider where he was at the start of the season. I think 3 DNFs was crashing into anything that was there. You know, he was really struggling, but 17 points in 2 races is not bad at all. And I hope he gets it right from here on. And we will go on to Valtteri Bottas. He had that incident with Kimi Räikkönen in turn 2, I think it was. Bottas, no penalty, absolutely correct decision. It's the first lap. Had that happen on lap 5, maybe it would have been a penalty, but he's hit the curb hard, rebounded into Kimi Räikkönen, and that's essentially all it was. Wrecked their races at that point. Bottas fell to the back and was a lap down on the rest of the field, and he still finishes second. Yes, he got lucky with safety cars, but, you know, you've got to be in it to win it. You make your own luck at the end of the day, and let's face it, you know, second place is a pretty good comeback from a lap down and plumb last. Kimi Räikkönen, we'll carry on with him, seeing as we're talking about their collision. Again, like I say, right decision by the stewards not to penalise. Just a racing incident. He's hit the curb too hard. It's all gone wrong. Kimi Räikkönen then went on to puncture his tyre with more contact, I think, or picked up some debris. Frustration was clearly showing. He drove back to the pits far too quickly and he ripped the floor off his Ferrari. Lucky for him, the red flag came out and they got to repair the car, but Kimi Raikkonen comes away from the weekend with a very, very rare accolade indeed, and that is Kimi Raikkonen retired twice from the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Retired after his puncture, of course. Then he rejoined the race when they managed to repair the car under the red flag, and then retired again towards the end of the race. He was classified, as I said earlier, but he was officially as well. A retirement. Kimi, I think we can confidently say, coming to the end of his Ferrari career, and unfortunately, I would sense probably coming to the end of his Formula One career. Dependent, but again, in another video, we'll go into this, dependent on what Fernando Alonso does, I feel, would depend on what happens with Kimi Raikkonen. That's a lot of depend and dependent. So, who else can we go into? Perez, that sounded wrong. That sounded very wrong. What else can we do? Perez and Ocon, they've struck again after Canada, all that controversy. Well, I say controversy, it wasn't massive controversy in the context of what's happened this weekend. But Force India, of course, in Canada got it all wrong. The drivers ended up losing out massively there. And I think that's kind of bubbled over. They'll probably say not. But I do feel as though that was a little bit of Ocon reeling from Canada. Similar to Bottas, Raikkonen, he's hit the curb on the inside of the corner a bit too hard, rebounded into his teammate, not corrected quick enough, and then hit him again, or Perez hit Ocon anyway, and that really did ruin Perez's race. He pitted at the end so they can retire, so they can stick a gearbox in for Austria, but Esteban Ocon with a pretty solid return for 6th place. But I think the biggest thing to focus on for Force India is before all this happened, they were running best of the rest behind Hamilton and Vettel, and probably would have finished 1-2 in the race. Yeah, and to bring some context to that, a 1-2 finish for Force India would pretty much have guaranteed them 4th in the Constructors at this early stage in the season. The team will be furious, absolutely furious. If they stay calm, we allow them to race. It's okay, these things happen. But I'd imagine somewhere Vijay Mallya is punching walls. He'll be so frustrated. I mean, they're probably going to finish ahead of Williams anyway, but that would have just absolutely confirmed it. So they need to sit the drivers down, calm them down and say, okay, that's it, one apiece, let's move on to the next one. And we need to think of the team. Neither driver are going to win the Drivers' Championship. They need to be thinking the team game, and that's important. I'm sure Force India will drill that into them as well. McLaren picked up points. Yes. But more importantly, both cars finished. Oh yes, I feel like putting some music in there just to celebrate that moment. Both cars finished. 2 points, huge positives, unless you're Eric Boulier and the rest of McLaren, who are pretty annoyed that they're still having Honda engine issues, which cost Fernando Alonso dear. He believes they could have won the race with more power, and I kind of agree. But at the same time, using that logic, any driver could win the race with more power, because that's kind of what you need to win races. But I know what he's saying. Had they not had the issues and they'd have continued with the pace they had, remained consistent, they were right on for at least podiums, possibly a race win with everything that happened. And I think that's going to be frustrating for them. We will do a McLaren Honda video because I think the divorce is on the horizon. As for that, Alonso's comment, could have won the race. Yeah, like I say, I kind of understand what they're saying. I kind of agree to a point, but I think with the pace they had anyway, I think Bottas would have probably won it if those two were 1 and 2. But Eric Boulier absolutely furious. It could have been more, even if not the podium and not wins, it could have been, 6th, 7th place, which would put them ahead of Sauber. And that brings me nicely on to them. They managed to pick up a point despite their drivers colliding again. Sauber likes to let the drivers collide. Not so much race, just crash into each other. They did switch the drivers around at one point. Wehrlein getting past Ericsson with the agreement that if he couldn't pass Alonso, they'd switch back. Problem was for them, Stoffel Van Dorn was pretty much cruising up behind them at a decent rate of knots, so they couldn't really afford to back off and let him through. It would have cost them dear. So I think frustrating for Ericsson, but I think he'll probably let that go because of that. Carlos Sainz stayed relatively out of trouble after his first lap spin. That made me laugh. Basically, his teammate drove off the track, distracted him a little with the rear tyres and spun out all by himself. But I think Daniel Kvyat, he should have been more careful, but no penalty was a correct call on that one. He did retire Daniel Kvyat. I'm going to say something about that at the end of the video. Negatives for Palmer, another poor performance this weekend. Okay, reliability is hampering, of course it is, but ultimately, I don't know how long he's going to hang on to that seat. I really don't. I fear for him. I think come the end of the summer break, we could see somebody else in that Renault alongside Nico Hülkenberg, who also retired after hitting the inside of the wall just before the castle section, which was a proper driver error. Frustrated with himself, understandably. Stoffel Van Dorn, he came in 12th, so great glimpses of what we all know he's capable of. Pretty much trouble-free, I have to say. Pulled off some overtaking. Not spectacular, but it's in a McLaren Honda, so an overtake is an overtake, and that's probably more than he's done all season. We need to have a little word about Kevin Magnussen. 7th place for Haas. Of course, he ran 3rd, didn't he, for quite a while in the Grand Prix, but 7 points. Absolutely going to be vital in that scrap towards the back end of the table with Renault and co. Felipe Massa, gutted. Gutted for Felipe. Could have won the race. Another one that could have won the race, but a damper ended that. It broke, and he ended up looking like he was bouncing on some sort of proper dodgy trampoline down the start-finish straight. It was actually quite amusing to watch. But for a guy that was supposed to be on the beach, he's had a pretty good season. He really is, and I'm impressed with him on that. He should have done, I think he could have won it. Williams won too, maybe, if it had all gone that way. But again, I think, when you think about Bottas and Ricciardo, it probably wouldn't have happened. Let's have a little scroll through my notes here and see if there's anything else I need to bring up before I start to summarise a little bit. No, I think that is it. I do want to just say, I just mentioned it a minute ago, on behalf of everybody in Formula One, and on behalf of all fans of Formula One, a massive thank you to Daniel Kvyat. Before he retired with his engine problems or with his mechanical issues, the race was a bit dull. Lewis Hamilton was kind of disappearing. The field was starting to stretch. We were on for another 2016. And then Daniel Kvyat retires, parks his car nice and awkwardly, brings out the safety car, and the rest, as they say, is history. So sorry you retired, Daniel, but thank you so much for giving us a great race in the end. Gotta feel sorry for the guy. He's not having all the luck. Probably, if we're being honest, his last season in Formula One, he will probably be replaced by Pierre Gasly next season at Toro Rosso. I would hope alongside Carlos Sainz, although how long he hangs on there is another matter. I think that is about it. I'm just going to take a quick look then at the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships before we go. Sebastian Vettel somehow managed to extend his championship lead. Let's not get back into that. 14 points clear now of Lewis Hamilton. Valtteri Bottas has got to look over his shoulder a little bit. Daniel Ricciardo is looming large. Kimi Raikkonen drops to 5th, still on 73 points. Verstappen stays 6th on 45. Esteban Ocon will be very happy to have got those points and close the gap on his teammate. Could have been so much more for him, though. Carlos Sainz, 9th, 29 points. Felipe Massa stays 10th. Carlos Sainz, I have to say, he just goes about his business, doesn't he? Nice and quiet, gets it done. 29 points on the board. Very nice indeed. As for the constructors, and that's the one that pays out the money, of course, Mercedes are top 24 points clear of Ferrari. Big weekend for them. Red Bull pretty much alone in 3rd place. Again, big points next to Daniel Ricciardo. Could have been so much more again. For Force India, they have 79 points. They remain 4th. They look pretty comfortable there, but that 1-2 would really have done it, wouldn't it? Oh, but they're so frustrated. Williams, they've overtaken Toro Rosso, which is, they'll be happy with that, but they seriously need to book their ideas up and find some consistency. Toro Rosso, like I say, dropped down to 6th. Haas ahead of Renault now in 7th place. That is a good scrap to keep an eye on. Sauber with their point go on to 5, and McLaren, actually that's probably Sauber's biggest points haul for a while, actually. And McLaren on just 2. They seriously need to do something to sort that car out and get themselves up the table, because they should not be down there. I think we can all honestly agree on that one. Super quickly before I go, you'll probably see it on screen at some point. Just want to give a massive shout out for Charles Leclerc, or Leclerc, how you want to say it. Fantastic weekend in F2. I think, having watched it, probably the best all-round weekend drive, the best individual weekend drive I've ever seen in GP2, in F2, whichever you want to call it. Absolutely fantastic. He looks set now for that title. So frustrated for Ollie Rowland. He was so close. He was in control of that race, the sprint race, and that kind of got taken away from him, it's a shame. But I think Charles Leclerc will be pretty much champion at the end of that, which is great for him. Fantastic for Ferrari as well. He's one of their young drivers. And I'm going to say, get him a seat in F1 ASAP. I would be very surprised if he's not somewhere in F1 next season, because let's not forget as well, if he wins a championship in F2, he is not allowed to race in F2 anymore, so he's got to find a seat somewhere. So he looks a serious seriously good driver, doesn't he? He really does. Him and Pierre Gasly next year. Let's get him in the sport. Oh, I'd love to see them racing again together. Fantastic. So massive congratulations to him. But that is it for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix review. I'm going to be popping up with a few videos here and there. Maybe little rants and opinions on McLaren and Verstappen as well. I think I need to sort of say that. I've been away for 7 months, so I kind of got a lot of catching up to do as well, which I will do. Massive apologies for that. There are reasons behind it, but I'm not going to get into that because I've got way too much that I've already spoken about and don't want this video to drag on too long. If, by the way, anything happens regarding Sebastian Vettel and any retrospective action, I will do a quick update on that as well. But that is it, guys. As ever, thank you so much for watching. I've been SMC. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.